Okay, thank you, Alex. I think that was a number of great points that you raised. Let me just take a couple of those in turn. Let's start with impact on clients. While it's no doubt true we don't use the PPI, we have done an impact study that's a randomized control study. This is administered by a third-party agency called EDA, and then funded through Sydney, one of the government banks that lends to us. And just to give you some of those results, the results suggest that the household income increases by 45% per annum, the productive assets increase by 36%, the additional revenue streams increased by 67%, and investments in housing increased by 23%. Now, the reason why I'm raising that is that though the social impact is a complementary goal to the profit motive, you can see that these results show that there is a tremendous impact in terms of poverty eradication. And I think what's most important is we get that impact by spending zero donor or subsidy dollars. So the measure is not simply, okay, is the impact good, and maybe it is slightly less than the impact from a donor-driven entity, but I think the key metric is for $0 of donor funds, you're getting an impact on poverty. Now, clearly, if you put in some donor funds, you're going to get a greater impact on poverty for the particular locale. But here, by doing $0, there's really no limit to the number of people who can have their income increase by 45%, because there's no subsidy required. And while there is certainly maybe $2 trillion in donor funds, we feel that that donor fund should be better spent on the absolute poorest, the ultra poor, AIDS orphans, and others who could never participate, let's say, in a microfinance program. And so the zero sum that we see is any donor funds that go into a microfinance program that otherwise, with commercial capital, can create an impact, means donor funds are going away from poor people or ultra poor communities or more disadvantaged communities who could greatly benefit from those donor funds. The other thing I want to raise there is, from the client perspective, it doesn't matter whether the money is foreign or domestic. It doesn't matter whether the investors are earning very high profits or not. What matters to them is, are they getting a loan on time? Can they generate income? And can they get their families out of poverty? And what we see from our clients, at 45% increase in income per year, they're actually doing higher returns on investment than even the investors get. But let's say hypothetically the investors did even better than that. It's immaterial to a poor woman what the investor's getting. What's material to her is she doing better than she would otherwise? Is she able to get her family out of poverty? And for us, what's material is how many people can we give that opportunity to? And I think that the commercial approach certainly does that. Thank you.
You've reached your perfect. You've reached your 3 minutes. But you will get a chance to have another rebuttal. So save whatever you were going to say next. So Alex, your first rebuttal.
Sure. First of all, I was very pleased to hear about this study, Vikram. I also would be very much, and I'm saying this honestly, would like to see it. We commissioned a researcher to actually look at all the studies, published studies of microfinance impact studies. This past, did it in the spring of this year, and she didn't come across this study, and I hope that if it's published and maybe not that well known, that it can be brought to more people's attention and to be included in a wider literature of impact studies. Second of all, in terms of donor funds, very few of the mature organizations receive any meaningful amount of donor subsidy right now, whether they're social purpose driven or profit maximizing. Donor funds in microfinance right now are used for seeding organizations and seeding ideas principally, and tools in microfinance. So I think that you're not talking about organizations that I'm favoring of a different approach, absorbing a lot of donor funds. In fact, Grameen Bank dismissed its donor consortium in 1995, 15 years ago, and said, we're done with you, we're going to mobilize savings, and we're going to use our own resources to go forward. And that's much more common than otherwise. And so I think it's a bit of a false dichotomy. Second of all, I think that in microfinance, and again, Vikram, what SKS is doing today with its investor pool and management team may or may not be what it's doing in 5 or 10 years. I think that organizations that are set up to maximize profit and to satisfy investors who may have no social motivation will tend towards products and clients that maximize profit. Those aren't always the products and clients that contribute the most towards poverty reduction. And I think whatever that trend is, I think the trend will be towards the products and clients that are most profitable, and I think that will stunt the poverty impact over time. Lastly, yes, it does not matter to the poor woman whether the money that she got is coming from a savings or local loans or foreign investment, but microfinance happens in a socio-political context. And so this is why if in 2008, in Andhra Pradesh, where the politicians became mobilized against microfinance, clients of SKS and SHARE and many other groups did not get loans for 7 or 8 months as the politicians turned the screws. And finally that was resolved, and there were many people that helped resolve it behind the scenes. But we see that in the aftermath of the IPO, that this backlash is gathering steam and may in fact be even more severe and more on a national context than what happened in 2006. And so that's worrying. And so where money comes from and who's benefiting and who's profiting in that context does matter.
Thank you, Alex. That was exactly 3 minutes and 2 seconds.